The modern world. Most of us live in cities, surrounded by the products of human progress. Transportation, food, entertainment, and of course, other people. Lots and lots of other people. We've harnessed the power of elemental forces. We've blunted the impact of the weather. We've rendered immense distances down to a minor inconvenience. In fact, the story of the modern age is a story of convenience. We have remade the world into a place where everything we want, need, or desire is available at the touch of a button. But what if it wasn't? What if we weren't surrounded by civilization and society? What if nature and the elements still held power over us? What if convenience hadn't been invented yet? In the winter of 2019, students from the modern world suddenly found themselves traveling back in time to January of 1776. Their goal was to reenact one of the most vital missions of the American Revolution. Along the way, they would find themselves living the past instead of reading about it. My name is Heath Hamrick, and for me, this is not an unusual day. For these students, however, today is pretty unusual. They are here, the Lyndon Baines Johnson National Grassland outside Decatur, Texas, early on a Saturday morning and far away from any computer screens, to take part in an annual project allowing students to experience, in real time, a bygone era. One year, students found themselves in 1962, working with President John F. Kennedy to avert war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Another year saw students aboard the RMS Titanic during her final hours before sinking into the North Atlantic.
Doing these, you get to learn just a little bit more than you do just like listening about it or reading about it. So I feel like every single one has put me in the experience, has made me learn more than I knew going into it, and has made me appreciate everything that they had to do in order to survive.
Texas in February isn't exactly Massachusetts in January, but these students are nevertheless about to get way out of their comfort zones. The teachers are going all out to help, acting as colonial militia and providing the props the students need to truly feel like American rebels. Teacher Lori Alsobrook, who once turned a school cafeteria into the RMS Titanic, was responsible for building the cannons that would become known to the students as liberty and independence. As I set out to gather the students, my colleagues Matthew Matouche and Seth Duban are no longer teachers. They are Captain Hugh of Connecticut and Mr. Cooper, Colonial Scout. The students are enlisting under colonial names, having studied colonial professions, coming to this event as blacksmiths and wheelwrights, coopers and farmers.
I think it started with the enlistment, and it happened really quick for me, and I tried to carry through on that and do the best I could with leading my crew from Connecticut.
Carrie and Kate. As corporals, they face a tough challenge: getting a crew of students who are used to working from home, alone, to work together, dragging heavy cannon through the woods. The students manning each cannon are role-playing as being from different colonies. Kate's crew, under my command, are from Massachusetts, while Carrie's crew, under Captain Hugh, are from Connecticut. Historically, the colonies didn't see themselves as sharing much of anything with the other colonies. The idea of a United States of America was a far-fetched thing in 1776. We wanted to see if the students, separated out like this, would begin to feel the same, as two separate entities sharing a mission instead of being united in a cause. Captain Hugh and I were going to do our best to aggravate that divide.
We didn't talk to each other. We didn't sit by each other. We had separate cannons. It was kind of like we had our own little like group, so we didn't interact with them.
The rift was real in a sense. Like I feel like I had a lot of pride about being from Massachusetts. Like I definitely felt superior.
Corporals, let's get the guns turned around, facing the trail. Every cannon's important. Every cannon. General Washington needs them all. Mr. Cooper, why don't you go ahead and scout us out for a little while? Captain Hugh, are your men of Connecticut ready for this? Are we ready, Connecticut?
Yes, sir.
Sir, yes, sir.
Come on, let's go. Move out!
It was time to get underway and face the trail ahead. It is January of 1776. In April, British troops marched into the Massachusetts countryside to arrest troublemakers and seize weapons. They were met by hundreds of angry American colonists and driven back into Boston. Late in 1775, the Continental Congress sent Virginian George Washington to take command of the colonial militias surrounding the British in Boston. He quickly realizes that the one thing his forces truly do lack is cannon. Desperate, he sends Henry Knox to fetch the 59 cannon recently captured from the British at Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York. It is a journey of hundreds of miles in the winter through the wilderness. It is a race to avert absolute disaster. Face the trail and the mud. Lots of mud. Miles and miles of mud. Authentic, messy, cannon-slowing mud. Away from keyboards and screens, away from the internet and air conditioning, the gun crews were learning that something as simple as mud can turn a trail into an impassable obstacle.
Oh, it was definitely like the combination of the cannons and the mud. That was the worst.
The mud, the terrible, terrible mud.
That length on its own would be a lot to walk, and then to walk in the mud, and then to walk in the mud hauling a cannon.
There was like hill after hill after hill in the mud, and it was hard to like not just kind of slide down.
Where are we heading? This way? Yes, sir. Connecticut, what seems to be the problem?
Almost immediately,
Well done.
the crews under Tyrion Kate started thinking around the trail in the mud, diverting the cannons through the woods and around the puddles.
There's mud up ahead.
It was a STEM challenge, 1776 style.
There's a lot of mud.
Okay. Let's get. How bad? Let me see. Let me see.
Right? No. I think we have to get it through right here.
Okay. We're gonna go right, but we gotta make sure she doesn't fall down this hill.
Good teamwork, good communication.
Fall in.
That's how we'll beat the British, right there.
Wheels were lost, so were shoes.
All the mud because my foot kept on getting stuck and my shoe almost flew off and I almost fell on my face.
The Connecticut folks are clearing brush ahead of us. Very best thing I've heard about Connecticut. Corporals, front and center. Captain Hugh, Mr. Cooper. Yes, sir. Front and center. Gentlemen, are we here? And the map's road is that way, and it's left off the road to the right. Or there's the road to the right, this one, and it's left off that. Why don't you scout ahead? Look to determine for sure which road we're going to take. Till then, it's a good time to keep these people soldiers, not just cannon pushers.
By the time we hit a crossroads, the time had come to take a break from marching and start soldiering.
We need more than a rest, we need training. Being an army is about more than hauling pieces of wood and iron. That's good, Massachusetts. Give me a military line out in the field. It's time we learn how to be soldiers.
Revolutionary reality check. There were few professional soldiers fighting for independence. Against the best trained army in the world, the rebelling Americans were throwing shopkeepers, coopers, booksellers, lawyers, farmers, and cobblers. Most had only fired a weapon while hunting for dinner.
Back to front.
Loading and firing took multiple steps. In order to actually hit anything, armies had to move and fire in unison.
Yo, this company can fire 3 aim shots a minute.
None of this comes naturally, not even with cap guns.
Yeah, I think the first drill where, you know, we had the corporals kind of in charge, and we had to learn all the the hand positions and stuff. That was very like, oh wow, I'm in an army, you know. So that was cool.
Fire! Back to the cannons, fall in.
Playing soldier with cap gun seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? But here's the thing about historical immersion. It doesn't take much for the ridiculous to fade away, and for the past to come alive. One of the questions always asked of students after the project ends is, when did this become real for you? When were you in 1776?
The most real moment for me was every time we took a break, kind of towards the beginning, and then like you couldn't sit anywhere without sitting in a bush of thorns. So for me, that felt like it was supposed to be uncomfortable. It was supposed to be uncomfortable because that's how it was back then.
I mean, like when you read about it, you see it and it's like, wow, that's tough. Next topic. But then you live it and you're like, oh, that's hard. I hope I never have to do this again.
Just to have some flavor, they had to churn butter for hours. They had to go and get the water from the pump. Like, they had to do everything. And now we're just sitting here and we're like, go up to the fridge, you press the little lever and it's there. And you know, you just grab it from the pantry and it's there. Like, it's so convenient for us and for them. Like, and going through all this, I was like, this is what they did. This is like, they deserve some respect.
Yeah, I think I also appreciate like our ability to climate control now. Like now we have air conditioning and heating, but we didn't have that for this whole thing. So at the end of the day, it was really, really hot, and then it got really, really cold, and it was like, well, we can't do anything about it. That's just what happens.
Since of how we live now, it's completely different than what we did, but to them it was normal, so it wasn't really different for them. It's like a different experience for us now.
One of the most immersive elements of this project was simple: the noise. The sound of a column on the march, tin cups bouncing, wooden wheels and carriages rolling, quickly transports you back to 1776. There are sounds you don't hear in the middle of a traffic jam. It seems so simple on a map, a well-marked trail leading from point A to point B. A Texas winter has turned that simple trail into something that demands almost constant deviations and detours.
Because there were different kinds of problems that we had at different times. Sometimes it was cannon, like y'all said, sometimes it was mud, water, and then trying to find your way around.
We're up ahead, so I think all the way around.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. Okay, boys.
Mr. Savage?
We're gonna make a straight shot through those trees. Too much quagmire over here.
So, aim right, hard right, hard right.
It's easy to imagine how hard it must have been during the winter of 1776 as 60 tons of cannon were hauled over the Berkshires.
There we go.
A wheel is lost, not for the first or last time. Captain Hugh's soldiers of Connecticut have to deal with repairs. Another STEM challenge, revolution style.
The idea that I thought worked best was turning the axle around on the wheels, because after that we had a lot less wheels break off than before we had done that. We had them break off like 2 or 3 times before we did that, and then only once afterwards.
We had to be resourceful.
The gun crews are truly operating as 2 different units that just happen to be sharing a road.
We never interacted at the beginning of the project. Like, we never talked, we didn't look at each other. And when we stopped, like, we didn't sit near each other, we didn't communicate at all. I felt like it became a little bit real. Like, not a lot, obviously not enough to hate or anything, but it was a little bit of like, Massachusetts, who cares about these guys? They're not that tough.
Always barking orders.
I mean, I got the connection with you, but you were from a whole nother state. Like, I've known you longer, but you were bad-mouthing me, so I was like, I mean, we were bad-mouthing you together, so it, like, worked really well.
Good job, Captain Hugh. Good job. Way to bring us together.
There were a couple times that I saw different soldiers, you know, kind of mean-eye somebody else. And, you know, there was something going on there.
But I felt a lot of, like, bitterness towards y'all. Like, whenever we were ahead, I was like, they were way back there.
Join or die. The flag our column carries was a warning for colonists. Competition, disdain, mistrust. These were common feelings militia from different colonies would have felt for each other in 1776. More than the British, more than the lack of supplies or training, more than harsh winters, it was the divide between the 13 colonies that threatened the outcome of the American Revolution most. A crossroads is reached. The perfect time to let the column rest, eat, and prepare for what comes next. And what are they eating? The staples of a colonial army on the march. Cheese and hardtack, also called ship's biscuit. Flour and water, baked hard, then baked again, until teeth can easily crack trying to bite into it. Hardtack was known to last months, years, even decades. It was simple to make, easy to carry, and almost entirely unappetizing. Most drink water, but I also offer them the colonial equivalent of Gatorade, Switchel. Mixed with water, this concentrate of Vermont maple syrup, lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, ginger root, and blackstrap molasses has a strong taste that isn't for everyone. I was surprised how many students not only tried it once, but kept asking for it, almost every time we stopped along the trail. Plans were made for the march ahead. Mr. Cooper returned from scouting the route, letting us know of the next convenient stopping place, Wolf Pond, some miles distant.
All right, let's get this column on the move. Remember, guys, we're not have the luxury of deviating from the trail. We're gonna have to power through.
Okay, now I gotta pull up.
Definitely lean it.
Good, thankful. Get it up there.
And so the march continued. As wheels were lost, students adapted. They came up with ways to ease the burden on those hauling the cannon.
I think the best thing we did was to have a separate person hold all of the guns.
Go Massachusetts! I can carry the rest of the muskets.
Thank you. Having each person hold theirs individually was just a terrible idea. Like, you couldn't push. And then we tried storing them underneath the cannon, but every time we go up a steep hill, they'd all fall out. So having one person hold the guns, even though it was less people to push, it was much, like, we didn't have to stop as much. So that was definitely helpful.
Regardless, the mud and the weight were taking a toll.
Oh, yes. Yes, good soldiers. Good.
Okay. Yeah. I'm okay. Help us. Let me carry some of it. Here, let me get your bag for you. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you.
Wheels continued to be lost. the trail started becoming rougher, steeper descents, harder and higher inclines. In 1776, Henry Knox and his men used barges, sleds, horses, mules, eventually oxen, to get 59 cannon from Fort Ticonderoga to Boston. Our soldiers have only themselves, and they were tired.
There were moments on the trail where we were all pushing those carriages, and then all of a sudden, let's take 5.
Massachusetts, get to the bottom of the hill and take a breather. Everybody grab a drink of water.
And for whatever reason, a small rest was enough for our group to gain a little bit of energy and just come out pushing a lot harder than when we stopped.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just like a total lesson in life. Powering through it right after a small break was pretty impactful.
Captain Hugh, move it out. Here we go. Wolf Pond in 30 minutes.
Go.
I want to be there in a half hour.
What time is it there?
Half hour before we get to Wolf Pond.
Hardly anyone in modern times can say they're used to or feel comfortable doing manual labor outdoors, in the woods, with no modern technology to turn to, no modern conveniences. Would they begin to turn on each other as they got frustrated and tired? Or would they band together? During the Revolution, the colonies suffered years of battlefield defeats before finally finding strength and unity. If our soldiers hold true to history, they will too.
Yeah, I definitely have a newfound respect for people back then.
What was your occupation before here?
Wig maker.
A wig maker.
Yes.
I left my wig at home for this journey.
Oh, who made it for you?
A lady by the name of Nellie. Cooper, what have you discovered?
Fresh water about 15 minutes that way in the lake.
15 minutes? 15 minutes walking, 15 minutes with camp.
15 minutes with Kenny.
All right. Well, we'll get there and have a little lunch and see if we can find a short path to Wise Hill.
All right.
It's just an incline.
Let's go.
Wolf Pond, roughly halfway through our journey. The students are tired, the cannons are falling apart, and the sun is falling. Packs are gratefully tossed on the ground. Hardtack, cheese, and dried sausage are the menu. Time was passed reading local newspapers, like the Virginia Gazette, even if the newest issue any of us had was weeks old.
If any of you regret the Army life, at the Marlboro Iron Works in Frederick County, there's immediately wanted a sufficient number of hands to cut 5,000 cords of wood.
Everyone needs a break. Captain Hugh and I don't provide one. We stage an argument designed to push the soldiers from different colonies apart.
This is not a Connecticut militia anymore. My commission comes from the Continental Congress of George Washington. Yours comes from the state of Connecticut. I am in command. In the future, keep your column alongside ours.
Arguing over who was in charge, even in the face of desperation, when far more pressing concerns arose, was a hallmark of the American side of the Revolution.
And then when you started talking bad about, like, the Connecticut guys, like, we didn't do anything, I was like, hold your phone, like, hold up right there, because I'm from Connecticut. I'm a Connecticut citizen, even though I'm not from Connecticut.
Captain Hugh and I are playing these parts right down to the hilt.
Just because we had we have a common enemy, but, you know, 2 different colonies, what do we have to do together? We don't have to do this. I don't have to take orders from you.
To be honest, we're tired and frustrated as well, so not much of it is acting.
I need 2 volunteers in a moment to go on a scout with Mr. Cooper.
Our worry over our progress isn't acting either.
They won from Massachusetts, one from Connecticut.
We have no choice but to get to the predetermined campsite at Wise Hill, some 4 muddy miles away. Keeping that in mind, I asked Mr. Cooper and 2 soldiers to follow a vague suggestion of a shortcut on the map. If they can find it, it will cut a mile or more from our journey. If they can find it. The students aren't getting much unity from us. We're playing the role of clashing captains after all. Luckily, the corporals are stepping up, drilling their crews in the manual of arms.
Present!
Each has a unique style.
Perfect. That is more like it. Okay, let's try this one more time. Ready?
Meaner. I want to scare someone. I want scare yourself. Between lunch when we were running those drills and I was drilling them. Okay. Prime. Make ready. After doing that, I was like, because it felt like I was actually in charge, and I was actually the one going, okay, let's do this. Let's go. What's next? Next. Make ready.
Ah! Ready? Ah! No.
Don't fire too soon, don't fire too late. Wait for the command from your corporal.
Ready? Ah!
Louder than Connecticut.
Ready? Ah! Fire!
The scouts return, claiming to have found the shortcut we're looking for.
We think we know the shortcut. And how far? It's not that bad. It's about 100 feet condition for the cannon. The ground is soft, but nothing they couldn't handle.
All right, find your packs. Let's get ready.
The time has come to leave Wolf Pond behind. Or so we thought. It doesn't take long to stumble into some drama.
Kevin, redcoats.
Mr. Cooper has found signs of a British column somewhere ahead.
Saw them? No, the remnants of their coats. I think they got snagged on a tree.
Did you see people?
I didn't see the actual people, but that's their coats. I've seen it before.
Where?
Just up ahead.
So far, the only enemy has been the road and the weather and our own stamina. Now the students have to be wondering if they've been drilling for a reason.
Keep an eye out.
Sir. All right, Mr. Coop. Sir, do you have your map?
Yeah.
It was when you genuinely wanted me to find a shortcut and I was genuinely scouting ahead. It wasn't planned. And man, that pressure, because obviously I don't want, we were already exhausted and it wasn't even halfway through. I genuinely wanted to find y'all a shorter route.
And you genuinely got us lost.
I did.
If you see anything, Mr. Cooper says anything, you come back and report to me, but be on the lookout. Also, if there's going to be any kind of obstruction. All right, move.
And so it begins. The shortcut through the woods in the hopes of evading the British and reaching our encampment before nightfall. The trail is narrower, less well used. It seems like a shortcut at least. It doesn't take long, however, before the trail widens again and begins to look familiar.
And then we got lost. I was like, at that point, I was just like, okay, our captain's stupid. Captain Hugh, you're now in charge. Like, maybe you won't get us lost.
I would like to point out that the person that actually got us lost would be our scout.
Yeah.
I love how he just accepts it too. He's like, yeah, that was definitely.
Mistakes were made, as they were in 1776. I wanted to be historically accurate.
We were honestly lost, and we had honestly just done a big loop and wound up right back at Wolf Pond. Every step now is a frustration, because it's a step we've already taken. The plan had been to keep pushing the Captain Hugh, Captain Neil rivalry until we staged a duel. The loser would have been shackled until a point during the night when he would risk himself to save the life of a soldier from another colony. That was meant to be our unifying moment. But looking at the tired faces of our troops, we made a decision as Matthew Matouche and Heath Hamrick instead of our colonial alter egos.
There's a better way to organize than we've done.
Maybe we should mix the two colonies. We can have some Massachusetts and Connecticut.
The time to unify was now.
We've been lost, we're tired, and the guns that we have to get to where they need to go are falling apart. We gotta split right down the middle. That started with the captain and I, and we're gonna end it. We're gonna end it. The flag we're carrying says join or die. That's about right. That's about right. I thought it was just canny saying. If we don't change something, I don't know if we're gonna get to that hill. I honestly don't. So here's what we're gonna do. We're We're gonna take 4 from each group. We're gonna mix up the cannons. 4 from Massachusetts, 4 from Connecticut. We're gonna hope that gives us a little bit of energy. And we truly don't have a choice. These guns have got to get to the next camp. They've got to. Everybody's gotta dig deep. If you know someone's getting really tired, take up their weight. Don't wait for them to ask, just take up their weight.
And so the gun crews were integrated, half Massachusetts, half Connecticut. And the camp at Wise Hill was still miles away. The trail seemed designed to test whatever strength we had found in unifying. Mud gave way to murky quagmires. There was no pretending. We were a tired group of non-soldiers trying to get 2 cannon to the top of a hill miles away.
I really started thinking about tapping out because I was getting like my feet felt like they were 20 pounds from walking so much.
I was just like looking down at my feet in the mud and I was like just pushing. I don't know where I was going.
For the last 2 hours, I just wanted to stop and cry.
We didn't have to overcome sectional differences. The goal united us. We'd either all get there or we all wouldn't. It was about as perfect a simulation of the American Revolution as possible. It was happening entirely by accident. The column stopped frequently, and it was during one stop that the students came up with an idea.
If this idea works, we are like gonna get a patent. We need a sprint.
Taking the cannons off the actual barrel part, or the carriage part, definitely made a big difference. It made them a lot lighter and easier to move.
Separating the cannon barrels from the carriages seemed to make things easier for everyone to move forward, especially since the carriages were in such bad shape that it was all the gun crews could do to keep them from falling apart.
I think that when the independents started falling apart, tied them together, that surprised me. The tying the back together, it held up surprisingly well.
The trail kept stretching out in front of us, muddy and without end. We stopped often, marshaling our courage for the next incline, the next puddle. Then we'd stop and do it all over again. Finally, we came to a decision.
Splitting apart the people with the cannons going ahead and the people with the wheel things staying behind. Because even though the people with the wheel things weren't a big fan of that thing,
it did get rid of that sort of kind of that weird thing where some people are ahead and some people are behind and everybody's waiting for somebody.
We divided into 2 groups. One would move ahead with the gun barrels until they reached Wise Hill. Then they would return to help the group moving more slowly with the carriages. That was the plan, at any rate. In reality, it was all either group could do to simply keep going. One thing I had always hoped to see with this project is the students using their wits and their will to problem solve on the trail. They did not disappoint. No sooner had the barrels disappeared around the bend than the carriage group decided to tie the 2 carriages together into a train.
And like stringing them together like a train and having everyone just push one big thing instead of 2 separate ones. It really just made a big difference.
Because everyone was so tired and putting them together, you could do like less work but same results because there's more people. And so I think that was really nice just for everyone who's really tired. And then also some people would pick up the slack and then we'd switch positions and more people do different work. So good idea.
Everyone lent a hand. Everyone pushed or pulled. The students started taking steps to help each other, coming together as a unit, more than I had ever dared to hope.
I think it was kind of at that last stretch where we had the big train for the cannons and we were just pushing super hard uphill, like grunting, trying to get it up. I think for that, like, we weren't in character anymore. We were really just trying to get these stupid cannons up the hill and into our camp.
I think for me, personally, because it was when we had already strapped the carriages together and we're doing that when we had, okay, let's rotate. We rotate jobs. Okay, let's rotate sides. So it wasn't, because at one point, like, one side of my back would just be cramping. You'd be like, okay, let's rotate sides. And I was evening out well, so it wasn't just like pushing one spot, one side the entire time on that entire stretch.
You were evening out the pain?
Yeah.
But still, the mud remained, and the trail, and the miles remaining as the sun set. We just kept moving. Forward. Always forward. Despite it all, the students kept pushing. Together. I have rarely felt prouder of a group of students. Were they learning about the American Revolution? Or were they learning more about each other? And about themselves? Did it matter? Finally, in the distance, as the light faded, our destination.
You see the road that's higher through the trees?
Yeah.
That's the road that's at the base of the hill. We are almost there.
And in the shadow of the hill, a welcome sight. The return of some of the gun barrel crew coming to lend a hand.
I knew it. I knew they'd be here just when we needed them.
We needed them a while back.
Alright.
It had been an epic day, lived in a way most of these students will never experience again. How many, I wonder, thought about Knox's men doing this day after day in 1776, in even worse conditions? The first day's march was at an end. The night was spent encamped at the base of Wise Hill. Because they had worked so hard, we told the students they didn't have to be in character. What we really meant was that everyone was so tired, no one, teachers included, had the energy left to go full 1776. It didn't matter. The students got a heavy dose of historical reality regardless. The temperature was dropping, it was getting cold, and tents and blankets beckoned.
Last night I was miserable, shaking in the bed, couldn't get warm even under the sleeping bag and all these, and can't wait to go home to some AC and a shower and my cats.
I think the hardest part was sleeping in the cold. It was really cold.
Even with Matusha's sleeping bag, my sleeping bag, and an extra blanket, I was still shivering and freezing, so I couldn't sleep.
And I was shivering, but I knew like there's nothing I could do about it. Like that's just how it was, and I had to go to sleep or else I was gonna be tired tomorrow. And I just felt like so in that experience, like I was a soldier shivering with no other choice but just to like grit through it.
Dawn. We broke camp and ate a colonial breakfast and tried to shake off the cold. We were back in 1776, if indeed we had ever really left it. For a lot of students, the cold night brought them closer to colonial times than anything else.
But this morning I woke up and my whole body was locked down and was like, you want to move? That's not a thing. So...
The night brought something else with it. A message from George Washington, congratulating the soldiers and gifting them with a symbol of the unity they had found on the march. It was time to leave the cannon for a while and to do some soldiering, a quick patrol through the nearby woods. For a moment, I was 8 years old again, pretending to lead soldiers in my imagination as I marched around the neighborhood. I wonder what that 8-year-old would think of being 38, still playing dress up, still pretending. I think he might have been cool with it.
Boys! Present!
A drill, like any other. But this one is interrupted by a faint sound in the distance.
Like I heard like distant whistling and stuff like that. I'm like,
I heard the whistling and I was like, wait, what the?
yeah, I'm like, I thought it was a bird. I'm like, is that a really weird mockingbird or something?
The sound of drums, marching feet, a column of British troopers on the march. The redcoats were coming.
Also, when we were doing the drill this morning, and then when we were like in the bushes, we kind of like ran back there and dove underneath a tree and got like thorns in my leg. So that was awesome.
And then it's like we had to get down and duck under, and it was just really, it was really neat.
The sounds faded. The British had marched on, perhaps on a parallel road. We continued our own patrol, pausing to drill every so often.
Make ready!
As we marched back towards the camp, another sound filled the air. The war cries of Mohawk Indians, allied to the British, erupting from the woods around us. During the Revolution, most native tribes fought for the British, and conflict with these tribes is one of the forgotten elements of the war. I wondered, listening to those cries in the crisp morning air, how Knox and his men might have felt, far from safety, alone in the wilderness. We got back to Wise Hill and prepared to finish what we had started.
Proud of this group.
Compared to the first day, progress on the second morning was easy. Level and dry roads, fresh muscles, bright eyes. That didn't mean the cannon were faring too much better. I found myself thinking of Henry Knox and his men, delivering the real guns of Ticonderoga to Washington. Once they reached Boston, those guns were emplaced on Dorchester Heights overlooking the British in a single sleepless night, so that when the Redcoats woke in the morning, they were ringed in cannon. They chose to flee to fight another day, sailing off to the next stage of the American Revolution. Most history courses don't even mention Knox's march, but I found myself thinking, what happens if he doesn't deliver those guns? I think the answer is simple. The British attack Washington's poorly organized, poorly fed, and poorly trained men outside of Boston, crush them, and the rebellion is over. For all of the mission's obscurity, Henry Knox and his men probably saved the American Revolution by bringing those guns home. Our guns made it home too. A little trail worn, just like the students, but home nevertheless. These students had been on the trail for almost 24 hours, doing their best to live and experience 1776. Soon they would head back to their homes, their technology, their conveniences. The success of the project would be measured by how much of 1776 they took back with them, and how often they revisited those hours they spent hauling the guns of Fort Ticonderoga.